My Songhua inkstone still held the cool of the morning mist. The sound of the jade pestle grinding lightly against the Huizhou inkstick was a low, steady rhythm, a melody that had soothed my soul for over 80 years. Grinding ink is like tempering the heart. It must be done slowly, steadily, without haste, lest the ink bubble and the heart fall into chaos. The air in the Hall of Serene Hearts was suffused with a familiar fragrance of sandalwood, aged pu'er tea, and mist-dampened rice paper. It was the scent of time, the scent of peace. But peace is the most fragile thing in the world. The heavy rosewood door of the tea house was pushed open forcefully, not with the gentle nudge of a regular patron, but with a decisive, impatient thrust. The creak of the hinges was like a painful groan. My daughter, Liang Anan, stood there. She wore a perfectly tailored white suit, her short hair sharp and stylish, and her high heels struck the ancient wooden floor like hammer blows. It had been 5 years since she had last returned, but it was as if she had never left. That overwhelming cold aura was etched into her very bones. But she did not come alone. Behind her was a group of strangers. A young man with slicked-back hair carrying a leather briefcase must be Chen Chang, the real estate developer boyfriend she often flaunted online. 2 people dressed like architects, brandishing measuring tapes and tablets. A lawyer with an emotionless face. But the person who made the inkstone in my hand freeze, who nearly shattered the inkstick, was the one who entered last. Song Qi, the calligraphy student in whom I had once placed my greatest hopes. There was a time I thought I would pass the Hall of Serene Hearts down to him, but he had chosen his own path, a path paved with fame, profit, and soulless commercial brushstrokes. His eyes now, as they met mine, no longer held the respect of a student, only an indescribable mix of shame and arrogance. "Father," Anan said, the word father sounding so foreign and sharp from her lips. "I'm back. I think it's time we had a frank conversation." She didn't wait for my reply, signaling to the lawyer. A thick file was placed on my yellow pearwood tea table, displacing the Zisha teapot set I was using. "This is a power of attorney and asset management document," Anne announced, her voice as clear as if she were presenting a project. Mother signed it before she passed. "It clearly states that when you show signs of cognitive decline or are no longer capable of effective management, I will have full authority to take over and modernize the Hall of Serene Hearts." I looked at the file. "Cognitive decline," I repeated, my voice steady. My brush hand had trembled when my wife, Qing Mei, passed away, but it did not tremble now. 80 years of living with calligraphy teaches you how to keep your spirit calm even when storms rage. "You've been forgetful lately, Father," Anne said, not even looking me in the eye. "You're still running this business with rules from the last century. This place is a gold mine, a legacy, but you're turning it into a dilapidated museum." Chen Qiang interjected, his smile like a cutting blade. "Uncle Liang, we have a wonderful plan. We'll transform this place into a high-end cultural and entertainment complex. We'll keep the name Hall of Serene Hearts, but there will be a bar, a contemporary art gallery. We'll start by demolishing the back garden and your study." Anne finished his sentence, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "That space will be perfect for a sky lounge with a view of the old town. Demolish my study. The place that held the soul of 3 generations of the Liang family. The place where my wife drew her last breath in the rattan chair by the window. Demolish the garden where she had personally cultivated every Longjing tea bush, every orchid." I looked at Song Qi. "Do you think so too?" He bowed his head, avoiding my gaze. "Master, times have changed. Art needs to adapt." Adapt. A fine word to justify betrayal. I knew that power of attorney was a lie. My Qing Mei, though ill at the end, her mind was brighter than the full moon. She would never have signed such a document. It must have been done through some trickery when she no longer had the strength to resist. Anne seemed to read my thoughts. "You don't need to doubt it. Mother's signature and thumbprint have been forensically verified. It's completely legal. Song Qi can also confirm her handwriting, can't you?" Song Qi nodded mechanically. They had prepared everything. A perfectly set game of Go. I was just an old, worn-out stone, about to be swept off the board of my own life. The architects began to measure, the sound of the tape measure unspooling like a snake slithering across the floor. I placed my brush on the jade brush rest. I stood up and walked towards the study. And Anne didn't stop me. Perhaps she thought I was going in to pack, to accept my fate. I closed the study door, shutting myself off from the chaotic world outside. The scent of old paper and fragrant ink enveloped me. I looked up at the horizontal plaque handwritten by my grandfather, "A serene heart is naturally cool." I knew a direct confrontation now would be suicide. They had the law on their side, youth and ruthlessness. But they didn't have what I had. They didn't have the seal. In this land of China, a signature can be forged, a fingerprint can be coerced, but a seal carved by a master, with its secret strokes and inimitable spirit, is more trustworthy than gold. And Qingmei's true will, the one she gave me on a moonlit night, was not signed, but stamped with a phoenix seal carved from jadeite that only the two of us knew. I walked to the carving desk, where the small knives lay silent like warriors awaiting their command. I selected a piece of honey-colored Shoshan stone, and Anne and her cronies saw a senile old man, a relic about to be cleared away. They did not see the lines I had begun to sketch in my mind, not on paper, but on the board of this game. They had made the first move. Now, it was my turn. And my move would be carved with steel and stamped with fire. The presence of Anne and her entourage was like a glossy, cold layer of paint brushed over the rustic, warm surface of the Hall of Serene Hearts. The scent of poor tea was replaced by Anne's expensive perfume and the chemical lemon fragrance of industrial floor cleaner. The old Elmwood table where I and my elderly guests used to discuss a game of Go or a Tang Dynasty poem was now occupied by laptops and flashy architectural blueprints. They didn't converse, they held meetings. Words like space optimization, profit margin, and high-end customer segment buzzed in the air like irritating flies. Xiao Mei, the tea girl who had worked here since she was a teenager, now moved about more softly, her eyes always downcast, but I knew her ears were taking everything in. She was like a silent pawn on the chessboard, unnoticed by anyone, but able to see the entire game. I didn't argue. I retreated to the inner tea room, where I usually received special guests. Anne left me alone, perhaps thinking it was a surrender. She needed me here, as a living decoration, a testament to the heritage she would boast about to her investors. My silence was interpreted by her as the helplessness of old age. A fatal mistake. In Go, the loudest moves are often not the most effective ones. That afternoon I made the excuse of going for a walk to clear my head. Anne didn't stop me, only telling Song Chi to keep an eye on Master, an insult wrapped in the guise of concern. I walked along the familiar bluestone alley, not to the park, but to a courtyard house, even older than the Hall of Serene Hearts. This was the residence of Old Master Zheng, my Go partner, a high-ranking player and a true old fox. Old Master Zheng was sitting alone before the Go board, holding a white clamshell stone, deep in thought. He looked up as I entered, his sharp eyes seemingly knowing everything already. "Has the storm arrived?" he asked, his voice calm, as he placed the white stone in a critical position on the board. I sat down opposite him, pouring a cup of Tai Guan Yin tea. "More than a storm," I said. "It's a flood that wants to wash away the very foundation." I told him everything, sparing no detail, from the forged power of attorney to the appearance of Song Chi. Old Master Zheng listened in silence, his fingers tapping lightly on the Go board. When I finished, he offered no comfort or outrage. He just asked one question. "What is your first move?" That was why I came to him. He didn't look at emotions, he looked at strategy. "I need to find something," I said. Qingmei's true will. It was hidden with a secret tea recipe. I only vaguely remember her saying it was, "where the moon's reflection never fades." A riddle worthy of Qingmei, Old Master Zheng nodded. She always had a taste for the subtle. He pondered for a moment. "And what do you plan to do with the tea house? Sell it before your daughter can tear it down?" "No," I replied firmly. "To sell is to admit defeat. The Hall of Serene Hearts is not a property. It is a seal. I will not sell it. I will transfer its patronage." Old Master Zheng's eyes lit up, transferring operational rights to a cultural foundation, citing the heritage preservation law, a masterful move. "But you need a partner powerful and discreet enough." "Mr. Li," I said the name, a legendary collector of art and antiques in Shanghai. It was said he could tell a Shenzhou painting from a fake just by smelling the ink. More importantly, he was a man who deeply respected true artisans. He had once sent someone to offer a sky-high price for one of my calligraphy works, but I had refused. "Mr. Li is a dragon," Old Master Zheng said, his expression thoughtful. "It's not easy to meet him, but I know someone in the auction world who once arranged a meeting for him. Let me try." "Thank you, my old friend," I said. "Don't thank me yet," Old Master Zheng waved his hand. "This is a long game. For now, your job is to act like a befuddled old man. Let them drop their guard. Let them revel in their imminent victory. In Go, the greatest enemy is not the opponent but one's own arrogance." When I returned to the Hall of Serene Hearts, Dusk had fallen. The lights in the tea house had been replaced with cold white LEDs, instead of the warm rice paper lanterns. Enon was directing Song-Chi to take down my calligraphy scrolls from the walls. "These are too old, Father," she said when she saw me. "We'll replace them with abstract paintings, more fashionable." Song-Chi held a scroll with the character Serenity, written by my own hand, his fingers trembling slightly. I saw it, a flicker of remorse in his eyes, now clouded by ambition. I said nothing. I staggered past, pretending to trip on the threshold. Song-Chi rushed to support me. "Master, be careful." I looked up at him, my old eyes feigning confusion. "Ah, is that you? Song-Chi, long time no see. Your characters lately, have they improved?" His face pallid. He didn't expect me to be this confused. And Anne looked at me with a mixture of pity and satisfaction. Everything was going according to her plan. I let him help me to my room. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the faint sound of drilling from outside, where Chen Chang's crew was surveying the garden. I was not angry. My heart was as still as an autumn lake. They were destroying the branches and leaves outside. But they didn't know that the roots of the Hall of Serene Hearts had burrowed deep into this earth for centuries, and I was those roots. The first stone had been placed. Now, it was time to wait for the opponent's response and prepare for the moves to come. In the following days, the Hall of Serene Hearts transformed into a bizarre stage where the past and future snarled at each other in silence. I became an unwilling actor, playing the part of a doddering old man, a shadow in my own home. I would accidentally spill tea on an architect's blueprint, forget Chen Chang's name, and ask Anna nonsensical questions about her deceased mother, which made her both irritated and convinced that her plan was entirely justified. Meanwhile, the study became my last inviolable sanctuary, and Anne hadn't dared to demolish it yet, perhaps wanting to preserve a touch of historical value to show off. It was in this lapse of her attention that I began my work, not writing calligraphy but carving a seal. The hand of a calligrapher can be as fluid as water, but the hand of a seal carver must be as steady as a rock, and the mind as sharp as a knife. Each seal is a miniature universe, where every line, every empty space, carries meaning. I took out the honey-colored Shaoshan stone I had prepared on that first night. I wasn't carving a name or a style. I was carving a cipher. It was a square seal, but inside were not Chinese characters. It was a complex design, resembling an ancient decorative pattern. Only an expert, or a connoisseur like Mr. Li, would recognize it. Its composition was based on the principles of the He Tuesday and Luo Shu diagrams, embedding my wife's date of birth and the 4 characters, serene heart, tea fragrance, transformed into intricate geometric lines. This would be the authenticating seal for the heritage document I was about to write. A seal that could not be faked. Because to fake it, one would need not just skill, but also the love and memory I poured into every cut of the knife. While I was engrossed with my carving blades, outside, Anne and Chen Chang were brandishing the hammers of modernity. They removed the old elmwood tables and chairs, replacing them with glossy leather sofas. The antique ceramic shelves were replaced with glass cabinets displaying foreign liquors. Song-Chi was assigned the task of recurating the art. He took down the ink-wash paintings by famous masters that my family had collected over generations, replacing them with garish, soulless oil paintings that, in an An's words, were more international. One afternoon, Song-Chi snuck into the study. I was carving an extremely fine line on the seal, my hand perfectly steady. "Master," he said, his voice hesitant. I didn't look up. "What is it?" "Those paintings. They are truly precious. Perhaps. You could let me store them carefully in the warehouse." I stopped, blowing a fine layer of stone dust off the seal's surface. "What is precious does not lie in the paper or the ink, Song-Chi. It lies in the heart of the one who hangs it. When the heart is changed, it matters not what painting is hung." He was silent. I knew he was torn. A part of him was still the young student from years ago who respected art, but the other part was blinded by fame and fortune. Anne. She said she would reserve a space for me to open a modern calligraphy class in the new project, he said, as if to justify his actions. To teach the youth, foreigners. To teach them how to write characters without souls, I asked, my voice even. I looked up at him. "I taught you how to hold a brush, but I forgot to teach you how to hold on to your heart. That is my failure." Song-Chi took a step back, his face ashen. He didn't expect me to say that. He expected me to scold, to be angry. But my calmness was more terrifying. It was like a carving knife, silent but cutting deep. He left in a hurry. In the evening, Xiao Mei brought me tea. She set the tray down, then discreetly slipped a small piece of paper into my hand. "Master, this is the list of investors the young mistress will invite to the project announcement next week," she whispered. I overheard her on the phone. I unfolded the paper. It was filled with big names in real estate and investment funds. And Anne was playing a fast and powerful game. She wanted to create a fait accompli, leaving me no room to maneuver. I nodded at Xiao Mei. "Thank you. Be careful." She nodded and left quietly. I looked at the list, then at the nearly completed seal on my desk. Everything was accelerating. I had to be faster. I spread a sheet of the finest Xuan paper on the desk. This paper had been aged for over 50 years, its surface as smooth as jade, capable of preserving ink strokes for centuries. I ground the ink, not with the usual Huizhou ink stick, but with an antique Ming Dynasty ink stick I had treasured, one mixed with musk and pearl powder. When written with, it not only produced a jet black color, but also emanated a pure fragrance. This would be the heritage document, not a dry legal text, but a work of calligraphy. It would narrate the history of the Hall of Serene Hearts, the Liang family's philosophy on tea and calligraphy, and my wife's wish to preserve this place. And most importantly, it would designate the new patron. The brush was ready, the ink was perfect. My heart was also perfectly still. I dipped the brush into the inkstone. The first stroke descended, silent as falling snow, but its weight was enough to withstand the entire storm raging outside. And Anne's so-called modernization proceeded with ruthless speed. Within a few days, the front half of the Hall of Serene Hearts was disfigured. The loud electronic music from the smart speaker Chen Chiang installed drowned out the gentle gurgling of the rockery stream. My elderly regular customers would come, look around, and then leave in silence, taking the soul of the tea house with them. I didn't blame them. Who would want to enjoy tea in a space that resembled the lobby of a tech company? And Anne and Chen Chang, however, were very pleased. They believed that purging the old clientele was necessary to welcome a new, wealthier, and younger crowd. They didn't understand that the value of the Hall of Serene Hearts lay not in its walls or furniture but in the very people who had been a part of it. Xiao Mei became my eyes and ears perfectly. The girl quietly did her job, brewing the new, brightly flavored tea bags An had imported with extraordinary patience. But not a single word, not a single phone call of An's escaped her notice. One evening, while cleaning the newly erected bar counter, Xiao Mei brought me another piece of critical news. "Master," she whispered as she brought my dinner, her voice full of worry. "They aren't waiting until after the announcement. I heard Mr. Anapation of Ford of you announcement. Chen tell the young mistress that they've hired a demolition crew. They'll come next Monday, the day after the event. They said they want to create a media buzz." My heart tightened, faster than I thought. They wanted a swift, decisive strike, giving neither me nor the authorities time to react. Once the study and the garden were a pile of rubble, nothing could be saved. "Did they say anything else?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Mister, Chen said he's already taken care of the construction permits," and the young mistress was on the phone with Song Chi. She sounded very angry, saying that Song Chi had to finish that seal quickly, or else he would face the consequences. The seal. So they were trying to fake my seal, and Song Chi was the one doing it. A sharp pain pierced my chest. The student I had treated like a grandson was now using the very skills I taught him to betray me in the most blatant way. "All right, I understand," I told Xiao Mei. "You just carry on as usual. Don't let them suspect anything." After she left, I sat in the darkness of the study. The Go game was reaching its climax. The opponent not only wanted to seize the territory, but they also wanted to erase my very identity. A fake seal bearing the name Liang Yong would be the ultimate humiliation. I had to accelerate my plan. The next morning I called Old Master Zheng from an old phone I kept hidden in my room. "Old friend, the situation is urgent. They plan to start demolition next Monday. That young brat Chen is truly audacious." Old Master Zheng's voice hardened. "All right. I've managed to contact Mr. Li's assistant. He is currently in Suzhou, a fortunate coincidence. He said he is very keen to meet you, but his schedule is tight. However, when I mentioned this matter concerns the survival of brush and ink, he agreed to spare 15 minutes. When and where? Tonight, 7 o'clock, at Yating, a private restaurant by Jinji Lake. It will be just you and him. I've arranged a car." This was my chance. My only chance. For the rest of the day, I put the finishing touches on the heritage document. Each character was written with the essence and spirit of 80 years of holding a brush. Its content was not just a legal document, but a heartfelt plea, a call to protect values that were slowly fading away. At the very end, I took out 2 seals. One was the seal of Liang Yong that I always used. The other was the new Serene Heart, tea fragrance design seal. I carefully stamped them on the document. The crimson seal paste stood out against the ivory Schwan paper, like blood on snow, solemn and irrefutable. At 6 in the evening, I pretended to be tired and wanted to go to bed early. Anne suspected nothing, and was even secretly pleased that I wasn't causing trouble. As soon as she and Chen Qiang left the tea house to meet a partner, I changed into a simple, indigo-colored linen robe, an attire I only wore for important matters. I slipped out the back door. The car, arranged by Old Master Zheng, was already waiting at the end of the alley. Yiting was a discreet and elegant place. I was led to a private room overlooking the sparkling lake. A man in his 60s, slender, wearing a simple but refined Tang suit, was already waiting. He had deep, bright eyes, the gaze of a man who has seen too much beauty and falsehood in the world. "Old Master Liang," he stood up, bowing his head slightly. "I am Li Jie. I have long admired your talent." "Mr. Li." "Mr. Li is too kind," I returned the gesture. "This old man is but a flickering candle. The brightest flame is often just before it extinguishes." Mr. Li smiled, a profound smile. "Old Master Zheng has briefed me on the situation. Please, show me the calligraphy that made him use the word urgent 3 times. I said little. I slowly unrolled the heritage document on the table. Mr. Li did not read it immediately. He just looked, in silence. His eyes glided over each stroke, pausing for a long time on the 2 seals. He raised his hand, not touching, but merely feeling the qi emanating from the work. "What a masterpiece," he finally exclaimed, his voice filled with emotion. "The brushwork has the structure of Yan Zhen Qing, yet the grace of Wang Zizi. And these 2 seals, one is the name, the other is the heart. This design seal especially is truly one of a kind. An ordinary person wouldn't understand, but a connoisseur can see a lifetime within it." He looked up at me. "So, Old Master Liang, your intention island. I wish to transfer the patronage and operational rights of the Hall of Serene Hearts to someone who understands its value," I said directly. "Not for ownership, but for preservation. I want to establish the Hall of Serene Hearts Cultural Foundation, and I would like to invite Mr. Li to be its honorary chairman. All profits, after expenses, will be used to fund young calligraphy and tea ceremony artisans." Mr. Li looked at me intently. "This is a great sacrifice, Old Master Liang." "It is not a sacrifice," I replied. "It is a choice, between letting it die in my daughter's hands and letting it live a new, more meaningful life. I choose the latter." He fell into a thoughtful silence. The room was filled only with the sound of the wind gently caressing the lake's surface. "Very well," he finally said, his voice decisive. "I accept. I will not allow the brush and ink to suffer such humiliation. My lawyers will draft the Foundation's establishment documents tonight. The day after tomorrow, at your daughter's announcement event, we will give them a surprise." An invisible weight was lifted from my shoulders. I knew I had found the right person. Mr. Li looked out the window. Destroyers often make fast moves. Builders must make solid ones. He turned back to me, his eyes filled with respect. "This game, Old Master Liang, you will not lose." Returning to the Hall of Serene Hearts, I once again put on the persona of a senile old man. But this time, my act had a new layer of meaning. It was not just to deceive Anan, but also to prepare for the final curtain call. My confusion became a weapon, a shield protecting the silent actions taking place behind their backs. The next morning, I sat in the tea room, pretending to doze off. Anne and Chen Qiang were excitedly discussing the upcoming event. They talked about the guest list, the menu, and a modern laser light show to be held in the very garden they were about to destroy. They were completely unaware that, in a luxurious law firm in Shanghai, Mr. Li and his team were working at full speed to finalize the legal procedures for the Hall of Serene Hearts Cultural Foundation. "Father, are you listening to me?" Anne shook my shoulder. I startled awake, my eyes bewildered. "Huh. What is it, my child? Where is your mother? It's time for her medicine." Anne sighed, an impatient sigh. "Mother passed away a long time ago, Father. I'm an Anne." She turned to Chen Qiang, her voice low, but I still heard it clearly. "See, his condition is getting worse. It's a good thing we acted in time." Chen Qiang nodded, giving me a look of feigned pity. "You should rest more, uncle." I let them believe they were doing the right thing, a mercy for me. Self-satisfaction is a sweet poison, and I was happy to let them drink it all. At noon, Song-Chi arrived. He carried a sandalwood box containing his seal carving tools. "Good afternoon, master," he said, maintaining an outward appearance of politeness. And Anne said, "I could use the study for my work." "Feel free," I said, my voice vacant. "There are many sharp knives in there. Be careful not to cut yourself." He flinched at my seemingly random words. He entered the study and closed the door. I knew what he was in there for. He was trying to finish the fake seal. I walked past, pressing my ear lightly against the wooden door. I could hear the faint, hesitant sound of a carving knife. Song-Chi had the technique, but he lacked the spirit. He could copy the form, but he couldn't replicate the soul I had breathed into my seals. His seal would only ever be a lifeless shell. I went out to the front courtyard, where Xiao Mei was watering the last few remaining pots of orchids. She looked at me, her eyes full of concern. I shook my head slightly, signaling that everything was under control. "Master, the young mistress's lawyer just arrived," she whispered. "He brought a new document, said it was an addendum to the contract, and it needs your signature." I had anticipated this. It was surely a document granting Anne even more power, perhaps the right to sell the property outright without consulting me. Sure enough, Anne and the lawyer found me soon after. "Father, this is just a small formality," she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "To simplify management later on, you just need to sign here." She held out the pen and paper to me. I looked at the paper, pretending to squint as if I couldn't read it. "The words are too small. I can't see a thing." "It's all right," the lawyer said. "These are just standard clauses." "I can't sign." I shook my head. "My hand is trembling too much. How about we let Song-Chi stamp it for me? He has that seal of Liang Yang I gave him a long time ago." I said it deliberately. I knew full well Song-Chi no longer used that seal, but I wanted to see their reaction. And Anne and the lawyer exchanged a look. Clearly, they hadn't prepared for this scenario. "A stamp. A stamp would be acceptable," the lawyer stammered. "But we still need a witness." "Here," I pointed to Xiao Mei, who was standing nearby. "This girl can witness for me. She is very honest." Anne bit her lip. Her plan was being derailed. She didn't want any more people involved, especially Xiao Mei, but faced with my innocent expression, she couldn't refuse. "All right, I'll call Song-Chi," she said through gritted teeth. Song-Chi was summoned. His face drained of color when he heard Anne's request. Use my seal. Just do it," Anne ordered. Song-Chi tremblingly took out his seal box. He opened the crimson ink paste. His hand shook so much he almost spilled the ink. Under the gaze of the lawyer, Xiao Mei, and me, he carefully inked the seal and pressed it onto the paper. Thud. The sound of the seal hitting the paper was hollow. I knew that seal, though his real one, had now become evidence of a fraudulent act. Xiao Mei had witnessed everything. She would be my witness. After they left, I smiled to myself. And Anne thought she had gotten what she wanted, but in reality, she had just handed me another piece for my game. A piece that would put her in checkmate in the final moment. In the evening, Old Master Zheng called me. "Everything is ready," he said. "The foundation has been established. Mr. Li has transferred a large sum into its account as operating capital. He has also sent invitations to everyone on your daughter's investor list, inviting them to the Hall of Serene Hearts this Saturday, not as investors, but as honored guests of the Hall of Serene Hearts Cultural Foundation. He wants them to witness this historic transition." "Excellent," I said. "Two birds with one stone." "Are you ready?" Old Master Zheng asked. "Your little play is about to reach its finale. I've been ready for 50 years, since the day I carved the first seal for the Hall of Serene Hearts," I replied. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the study, brewing a pot of Longjing tea from the last leaves from Qing Mei's garden. The fragrance was pure, the taste bittersweet, just like life. The old man's masquerade was about to end, and when the velvet curtain rose again, the stage would no longer belong to the deceivers. The event, Anne dubbed the Rebirth of the Hall of Serene Hearts, was set for Saturday afternoon. In the final 2 days before the storm, the atmosphere in the tea house was as tense as a drawn bowstring. Chen Chang's event team bustled in and out, turning the tranquil space into a noisy construction site. They installed a giant LED screen, strung up gaudy lights, and set up a small stage right where the koi pond used to be. I watched as the fish were hastily scooped into a cramped container, my heart aching for them. They were just like me, being forced out of their own home. I continued my performance flawlessly. I sat quietly in a corner, holding an old book upside down, muttering nonsensical poems. And Anne would glance at me from time to time, her expression a mix of pity and triumph. She had no idea that her every action was part of my and Old Master Zheng's calculations. The greatest burden now fell on Song Chi's shoulders. He had to finish the fake seal before the ceremony, and Anne needed it to legalize the documents she planned to sign with the investors right at the event. I knew he was in the study, struggling with the stone and the carving knives. I wanted to give him one last chance. At noon, I asked Xiao Mei to bring a tray of food to the study. "Tell him I saw how hard he was working and brought him something to eat," I instructed. Xiao Mei nodded. A while later, she returned, her face slightly pale. "Master, he didn't eat." He looked terrified. There was a ruined carving stone on the desk, and his hand was cut by a knife. It was bleeding. My heart ached. A chaotic mind is the greatest taboo in seal carving. When the mind is in turmoil, the knife will no longer obey one's will. Song Chi was hurting himself, both physically and spiritually. I decided to go in myself. I pushed open the study door. Song Chi flinched, hastily hiding the half-finished stone under a pile of paper. The faint smell of blood mingled with the scent of ink. "Get out," he said, his voice unusually harsh. "This is my workspace." "Since when did my study become your workspace?" I asked, my tone gentle. I walked over, looking at the carving desk. Though he tried to hide it, I could still see the fragments of a Qingtian stone that had been ruined. The carved lines were shaky, lifeless. He was trying to copy my serene heart, tea-fragrance seal, a futile effort. "Don't try anymore, Song Chi," I said softly. "You can't do it. You're missing one thing." "I'm not missing anything," he almost shouted. "My technique is second to none." "You're missing the heart," I said, pointing to my chest. "You can imitate the strokes, but you cannot imitate an old man's memory of his wife. You can copy the form, but you cannot copy the soul of the Hall of Serene Hearts. This seal," I pointed to the stone he was hiding, "will forever be just a lifeless rock, a testament to your betrayal." Song Chi broke down. He slumped into the chair, holding his head in his hands. "I had no other choice," he moaned. Anne said if I didn't help, she would expose my shady business dealings from the past. I would lose everything. "You lost everything the day you decided to trade your brush for money, Song Chi," I said, my voice holding no blame, only a deep sorrow. "You lost your peace of mind, you lost your self-respect." I placed a clean cloth and a bottle of antiseptic on the desk. "Clean your wound. A man who wields a brush and a knife cannot afford to have his hands stained in either sense." I turned to leave. "I am offering you a path. Choose it for yourself. Either continue to be an Anne's puppet, or be a man who dares to face the truth. The door to this study is still open, but my heart cannot wait forever." I didn't know if my words would have any effect, but I had planted a seed of doubt in his heart, a seed that might just sprout at the decisive moment. That afternoon, Anne's lawyer came again. He brought a new stack of documents, probably the investment contracts. He and Anan went into the meeting room, but they didn't know that Old Master Zheng had placed a tiny recording device, disguised as a go stone, on the table the day before. That night, Old Master Zheng brought me the recording. The voices of Anne and the lawyer were crystal clear. "As soon as Song Chi finishes the seal, we'll stamp it on all these contracts. The investors won't suspect a thing. After we get the money, we'll start demolition immediately. That old man, even if he finds out, it will be too late. By then we'll use the power of attorney to put him in a nursing home." The lawyer's voice cut in, "What about Song Chi? He knows too much." "It's fine." And Anne's voice was as cold as ice. "He's also a party to the forgery. He won't dare say a word. After this is over, we'll give him a sum of money and send him away. He's just a tool." A tool. I turned off the recorder. That was enough. The evidence of their conspiracy, their deceit, their forgery, was all there. Song Chi's seal of betrayal, whether he finished it or not, had already fulfilled its role in this game to expose the true faces of the masterminds. I looked out the window. The moon was bright and full tonight. I remembered Qing Mei's riddle, where the moon's reflection never fades. Suddenly, a memory flashed. It was a full moon night many years ago. She and I were sitting on the back porch, watching the moon reflected in the koi pond. She pointed to the moon's image in the water and said, "The moon in the sky waxes and wanes, but the moon's reflection in this pond, in my heart, and in the heart of the Hall of Serene Hearts, will never fade." The bottom of the pond. I knew where I had to look. The dawn of Saturday, the fateful day, arrived with an unusual stillness. The Suzhou sky was crystal clear, without a single cloud. It seemed as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Chen Chang's team had completed the decorations. The Hall of Serene Hearts now looked like a country girl forced into a gaudy evening gown, awkward and out of place. I knew I didn't have much time. The event would start at 3 in the afternoon. I had to find Qing Mei's will before then. I called Zhao Mei over. Zhao Mei, I need your help with something. Something very important. Can you keep an eye on An and her people for an hour? Don't let anyone come to the back garden. Zhao Mei looked at me, her eyes shining with determination. Master, you can count on me. Even if I have to spill tea on them, I will keep them occupied. I smiled. The girl was truly a blessing. I went to the back garden. It was partially ravaged. The chrysanthemum beds were trampled. The pebble path was churned up. But the koi pond, the soul of the garden, was still there, though the fish had been removed. The water's surface was as smooth as a mirror, reflecting the deep blue sky, where the moon's reflection never fades. I knelt by the edge of the pond. The bottom was lined with smooth black pebbles, but in the very center there was a large, flat slab of stone, darker than the others. I had always thought it was just a decorative rock, but now I looked at it with different eyes. I remembered Qing Mei herself had placed that slab there, saying it was the heart of the pond. I rolled up my sleeves and waded into the cool water. I used all my strength to try and move the stone slab. It was heavier than I thought. Sweat beaded on my forehead. A sharp pain shot through my back. But the thought of Qing Mei, of the Hall of Serene Hearts, gave me strength. Finally, with a strenuous grunt, the stone moved. Underneath it was not mud, but a small brick-lined hollow. And inside that hollow, wrapped in multiple layers of waterproof silk, was a Zeton wood box. My heart pounded. I tremblingly lifted the box to the bank. The box was not locked, just a small latch. I opened it. Inside, the fragrance of tea and old paper wafted out. On top was a scroll of rice paper tied with a red silk thread. I carefully unrolled it. It was the recipe for a tea my grandfather had created, the Moonlight Serenity Tea, a tea scented with osmanthus flowers and the night dew of full moon days. This recipe had been lost for a long time. And beneath the scroll was a silk paper envelope, yellowed with age. I pulled out the letter inside. It was not a will with dry, legal clauses. It was a letter, written in Qing Mei's own elegant, gentle hand. To Yang, my beloved. If you are reading these words, it means I have had to take a step ahead, to a place free from sorrow, to brew a pot of tea and wait for you. Don't be sad, my old man. I know you are stronger than you appear. The Hall of Serene Hearts is our life's work, but it is also a burden. I know An, our daughter. She is intelligent, capable, but her heart has lost its way. She does not understand the soul of this place. She only sees numbers. Therefore, I write these lines. This is my wish, and the wish of the Liang family. The Hall of Serene Hearts shall only be inherited by a child who possesses 3 things: a heart as pure as tea, a brushstroke as straight as a noble bamboo, and a filial piety that honors one's roots. If an Anne does not meet these conditions, please do not give the Hall of Serene Hearts to her. Find someone more worthy, someone who understands that the greatest value of a pot of tea lies not in its price, but in the heart of the brewer and the drinker. Let the Hall of Serene Hearts continue to be a place of peace, not a commodity. My personal assets, please use them to care for yourself in your old age, and to help young, talented calligraphy students who lack the means. Don't be too harsh on Anne. Give her a chance to find herself again. Perhaps one day she will understand. Loving you. Forever. Your Qing Mei. At the bottom of the letter was not a signature, but a bright, crimson seal in the shape of a phoenix. The jadeite seal I had carved for her on our wedding day. A seal that no one could fake. Tears streamed down my cheeks. This was it. This was my most powerful weapon. Not a legal document, but a letter from the heart. It held not only legal weight, but moral authority. I carefully placed the letter and the tea recipe back in the box, and put the box inside my robe. I moved the stone slab back into place, erasing all traces. When I returned to the tea house, Zhao Mei was standing at the back door, looking anxious. Master, the young mistress is looking for you everywhere. The event is about to start. Don't worry, I said, patting her shoulder gently. Let her look. I went straight to my room and changed into my finest clothes. I wore the moss-green silk robe that Qing Mei liked best. I combed my silver hair neatly. I looked in the mirror, an old, wrinkled face, but the eyes were bright and clear. Today I was not a senile old man. I was Liang Yang, the master of the Hall of Serene Hearts, and I was going to reclaim what was mine. I could hear the loud music and the chatter of the crowd from the front, and Anne was giving her opening speech. Her play had begun, and my play was about to reach its climax. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the slanting sunlight streamed through the windows of the Hall of Serene Hearts, but it no longer cast warm patches of light on the wooden floor. It was fractured by the blue and red laser lights, creating a chaotic and garish scene. And Anne, in her designer white dress, stood on the stage, confident and radiant. She spoke of vision, of breakthroughs, of transforming an old heritage into a symbol of modern Suzhou. The investors sat below, their faces elegant but their eyes as sharp as knives, nodding in approval. I stood hidden behind a pillar, observing everything. Old Master Zheng stood not far away, holding a paper fan, his expression as nonchalant as if he were watching an opera. Mr. Li, in his role as a special guest, sat in the front row, his face expressionless but his eyes never leaving the stage. Xiao Mei, in the new uniform Anne made her wear, was serving drinks, her hands trembling slightly. All the pieces were in place, and Anne began to play a grand 3D video of the Hall of Serene Hearts 2.0 project. Images of the ancient tea house being demolished were replaced by a modern, glamorous glass building. The electronic music was jarring. A few of the elderly honored guests invited by Mr. Li frowned slightly. And to ensure the legality and seamless transition, Anand said after the video ended, her voice full of authority, "I would like to invite Lawyer Chen and Mr. Song Qi, an expert in calligraphy and seal carving, to the stage to witness the signing of the first memorandum of understanding." The lawyer and Song Qi walked onto the stage. Song Qi looked pale, holding a red brocade box. I knew inside was the fake seal he had painstakingly completed. Chen Qiang brought out a large contract. And this, and Anne held up a gold-plated fountain pen, will be the signature that lays the foundation for a glorious new chapter. At that exact moment, wait, a deep, resonant voice spoke, not loud, but enough to cut through the music. Old Master Zheng slowly walked out from the crowd. Old Master Zheng. And Anne frowned, clearly displeased at being interrupted. Do you have an opinion? I have no opinion on business, Old Master Zheng said, fanning himself. I just find the atmosphere here too tense. A place like the Hall of Serene Hearts should speak of culture before speaking of money. Mr. Chen Qiang here. I hear he is a young talent. I wonder if you would be interested in a game of Go with this old man, as a way to open the heart before opening for business. The entire room was stunned. Chen Qiang froze. He never expected this situation. Sir, we are very busy. Chen Qiang tried to refuse. Oh, is that so? Old Master Zheng chuckled. A man who wants to build a cultural center but refuses an invitation to a game of Go. I'm afraid that's not very appropriate. Or perhaps, you're afraid of losing to an old man. The challenge was blatant. The guests began to whisper. Pushed into a corner, Chen Qiang couldn't refuse. Very well, I will play a game with you, sir, he said through gritted teeth. Xiao Mei quickly brought out a Go board and placed it in the center of the stage. This was our arrangement, to buy time and to shift everyone's attention away from the signing. Chen Qiang clearly knew how to play Go, but his mind was in turmoil. How could he be a match for an old fox like Old Master Zheng? His moves were hasty, full of openings. Old Master Zheng, on the other hand, was calm, each move slow yet deadly. The game became the center of attention. And Anne stood by, her face dark. Her perfect plan was being ruined by a ridiculous game of Go. While everyone was focused on the board, I quietly stepped out from behind the pillar. I didn't go onto the stage. I just stood in an empty space, where the afternoon sun shone. I said nothing. My appearance, in the moss-green robe, with a serene demeanor, was a statement in itself. People started to notice me. The whispering grew louder, and Anne turned, saw me, and a flicker of panic crossed her eyes. Father, what are you doing out here? You should go inside and rest. I didn't answer her. I just looked at Mr. Li. He gave a slight nod. That was the signal. I slowly took the Zitan wood box from my robe. I placed it on a nearby table. I opened the box, taking out the heritage document and Qing Mei's letter. I didn't need to say anything. Mr. Li had already stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice carrying a special weight that silenced the entire room. I am Li Ji. I did not come here today to invest in a real estate project. I came here to witness the birth of the Hall of Serene Hearts Cultural Foundation. He took the heritage document from my hand. This is a calligraphic masterpiece by Old Master Liang Yong. But it is more than a work of art. It is a legal document, a transfer of legacy. According to this document, Old Master Liang has decided to donate the patronage and operational rights of the Hall of Serene Hearts to the Cultural Foundation for the purpose of preserving and promoting the traditional arts of the tea ceremony and calligraphy. The color drained from An's and Chen Qiang's faces. Impossible, Anne. Anne screamed. He's senile. He has no right to do that. I have my mother's power of attorney. Is that so? Mr. Li smiled. Then let us look at the true will of Madame Liang. He held up Qingmei's letter. This is a letter written by Madame Liang's own hand, stamped with her personal phoenix seal. In the letter, she clearly states that the Hall of Serene Hearts shall only be inherited by a child with a heart as pure as tea, a brushstroke as straight as a noble bamboo, and a filial piety. Mr. Li looked directly at Anan. Miss Liang, do you think you meet those conditions? The final board was set. Now, it was time to reveal the last stones. The entire hall fell silent. All eyes were on An, who stood frozen on the stage, her beautiful face now contorted with shock and anger. Her lawyer hurried forward, intending to say something, but Mr. Li raised a hand to stop him. Legally speaking, Mr. Li continued, his voice still calm but full of authority, a later will invalidates a prior power of attorney, especially when there is evidence to suggest the power of attorney was established under questionable circumstances. Furthermore, Old Master Liang's heritage document, as the legal and fully competent owner, holds absolute legal validity. Competent? And Anne laughed hysterically. He's senile. He spends all day talking to the dead. He. Miss Liang, Mr. Li interrupted, his tone a little colder this time. Old Master Liang's competency was confirmed in writing by the Central Hospital just yesterday morning. I don't think we need to argue about that. Anne swayed. She never imagined I would be a step ahead of her. She turned to Song Qi, her last hope. Song Qi, tell them. Tell them my mother's signature and handwriting on the power of attorney are authentic. Song Qi stood motionless, his face pale. He looked at me, then at Anan, then down at the red brocade box in his hand. Everyone was waiting for him. It took a deep breath. The handwriting, Madame Liang's handwriting on the power of attorney is indeed authentic, he said, his voice trembling. Anne breathed a sigh of relief. But, Song Qi continued, it was signed when she was very weak, and she did not read the contents carefully. She thought it was just a document authorizing Miss Liang to handle her funeral arrangements. A lie, but a necessary lie to expose a greater truth. And the seal of Liang Yong that Miss Liang asked me to make, Song Qi opened the brocade box, holding up the seal for everyone to see, here at Island. But it is a fake. I tried my best, but I could never replicate the spirit in my master's carving. This seal is just a lifeless stone. He turned to me, bowing deeply. Tears streamed down his face. Master, I am sorry. I was wrong. It was the decisive blow. Everything crumbled around Anne. The investors began to stand up, shaking their heads in disgust, and quietly left. They were sharks. They smelled blood, the scent of failure and fraud. They wanted no part in a legal and moral mess like this. No, stop! Anne screamed, but no one listened to her anymore. Chen Chang, seeing the situation was lost, quickly slipped off the stage and disappeared into the crowd. A rat always knows when the ship is sinking. Only Anne was left, standing alone on the glamorous stage she had built. Around her was a terrifying silence. Old Master Zheng, at some point, had finished the game. More than half the board was surrounded by his white stones. Chen Qiang's black stones had no room to live. I walked onto the stage. I didn't look at Anne. I went to Song Qi. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Stand up, my boy, I said gently. A man who knows how to admit his mistakes can still be saved. I turned to look at Anne, my daughter. Her eyes no longer held arrogance, only confusion and emptiness. Why, she whispered. The question directed not just at me, but at herself. Why would you do this? I just wanted to make this place better. Better in your way, not in the way of the Hall of Serene Hearts, I replied. You tried to turn your mother's soul into a contract. You tried to turn my life's work into a commodity. You are not wrong for wanting success, Anne, but you were wrong to trample on your roots to achieve it. I took Qingmei's letter. Your mother said to give you a chance. This Hall of Serene Hearts, I will not leave to you. But its doors will never be closed to you, if one day you find yourself again. A daughter who knows how to brew a pot of tea for her father with all her heart. I turned to Mr. Li and old Master Zheng. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice echoing in the silence. "Today's ceremony is hereby concluded. But a new chapter for the Hall of Serene Hearts officially begins. From now on, this place will belong to the community, to those who love tea and love calligraphy. I invite you all to stay for a cup of moonlight serenity tea, brewed by my own hands, to celebrate this new beginning." There were no more laser lights, no more electronic music, only the faint fragrance of tea and the quiet murmur of conversation. The Hall of Serene Hearts had returned to its serene self, and Anne was led away by her lawyer. I didn't know what future awaited her, but I knew the game was over, and the winner was not me. The winner was heritage, was truth, was the decisive ink stroke that had restored the order of things. After the storm, the tranquility that returned to the Hall of Serene Hearts was not one of emptiness, but of fullness. Like the blank space left on a page after a powerful brushstroke, which is where the true meaning lies. The Hall of Serene Hearts Cultural Foundation officially began its operations under the patronage of Mr. Li and the management of a board of truly dedicated individuals. The hall was restored to its original appearance. The elmwood tables and chairs were put back in their rightful places. The calligraphy scrolls and inkwash paintings were rehung. New fish were released into the koi pond, swimming cheerfully. The artificial fragrances were banished, leaving only the scent of tea, wood, and thyme. I was no longer the owner, but the supreme advisor to the foundation. I didn't have to worry about business or ledgers. My only job was to do what I had done my whole life: brew tea, write calligraphy, and pass the torch to the next generation. Song-Chi, after that day, came to me, knelt, and begged to start over. He didn't ask me to take him back as a student. He only asked to stay at the tea house, to sweep the floors, to serve the tea, to be near the brush and ink every day, to wash away his mistakes. I agreed. Sincere repentance is a precious medicine. I couldn't bear to refuse it. Xiao Mei became the manager of the tea house. The girl had a natural sensitivity to tea and a pure heart. Under my guidance, she quickly learned how to run the Hall of Serene Hearts according to its true philosophy. The tea house began to offer free calligraphy and tea ceremony classes for children. The sound of their cheerful laughter and the rustle of brushes on paper brought new life to the place. One autumn afternoon, as I was sitting on the back porch watching the maple leaves fall, and Anne returned. She didn't drive a luxury car, nor wear a designer outfit. She wore a simple sweater and flat shoes. She looked simple and a little tired. She came alone. She said nothing, just quietly went to the kitchen, where I still kept Qingmei's tea set. She awkwardly washed the pot, boiled the water, and added the tea leaves. Her movements were clumsy, but there was a focus and reverence in them. A while later, she brought a cup of tea to me. "Father, please have some tea." I took the cup. It was Longjing tea. The water was a little too hot, the tea a little too bitter. But as I drank, I tasted something different, something that the perfect pots of tea before did not have. It was the taste of remorse, the taste of effort. I set the cup down. "It's delicious," I said. 2 streams of tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Father." "I know," I replied. I took Qingmei's letter from my robe pocket. "Your mother left this for you." An tremblingly took it. She read it, then broke down sobbing, like a lost child who had found her way home. I didn't comfort her, just sat there quietly. Some tears need to be shed. From that day on, and Anne would visit from time to time, not as a boss, but as a daughter. She learned how to brew tea, how to identify different types of ceramics. She didn't talk much about the future, just focused on the present. I knew her journey to find herself would be long, but at least she had started walking. One day, Mr. Li visited, bringing a gift. It was a superb piece of Duangxi stone, the finest material for making inkstones. "This," he said, "is for old Master Liang to grind out new masterpieces for the world." I smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Li, but I think this inkstone will have a more worthy owner." I called Song-Chi and Xiao Mei over. I placed the stone between them. "The future of the Hall of Serene Hearts," I said, "lies with you two. One has the skill but needs to find his heart again. The other has the heart but needs to hone her skill. Work together, support each other, so that the fragrance of tea and the stroke of the brush may linger forever." They looked at each other, then bowed to me in unison. I returned to my carving desk. I no longer carved complex seals. I just carved 2 simple characters on a small piece of wood. Bin An, peace and safety. I hung it above the entrance of the Hall of Serene Hearts. It was my blessing, for my daughter, for my student, for the tea house, and for my own eventful life. In the evening, I sat alone in Qingmei's rattan chair, looking out at the reviving garden. The moon was full again, and its reflection shimmered on the pond's surface. I did not feel lonely. Around me were the spirits of my wife, my ancestors, and the future generations who would continue this story. The inkstone may run dry, the brush may wear out, but the spirit of the Hall of Serene Hearts, like the fragrance of fine tea, will linger on in space and time. And that is true immortality. The autumn rain in Suzhou doesn't fall. It seeps. It seeps through the yin-yang roof tiles, into the moss-covered walls, and into the hearts of people. The Hall of Serene Hearts after the storm was like the earth after a downpour, needing time for the surface water to sink deep and nourish the roots below. Peace had returned, but it was a fragile peace, one that needed to be cultivated. Anne, my daughter, became a special kind of regular. She no longer came to discuss business but to learn how to be silent, to learn how to watch a tea leaf unfurl in hot water, to learn how to listen to the sound of a bamboo broom sweeping dry leaves in the courtyard. I could see her effort, a clumsy but sincere effort. She was like someone practicing calligraphy for the first time, her strokes still shaky, the ink still smudged, but at least she was willing to hold the brush. However, habit is a well-trodden path. One afternoon, after helping Xiaomei organize the tea storage, Anne brought me a carefully printed color proposal. "Father," she said, her voice a little hesitant, the tone of someone afraid of reverting to her old self. "I just have a small suggestion. I've noticed our tea house gets many foreign tourists. What if we design a rapid tea ceremony experience set, about 30 minutes, with English guidance, pre-brewed signature teas, and a small pastry, reasonably priced? It would significantly increase revenue." I looked at the proposal in silence. The words were professionally arranged, the profit analysis charts clear. She wasn't wrong from a business perspective. In fact, she was very right. But she was wrong spiritually. "The tea ceremony," I said slowly, "is not fast food, Anan. It is a dialogue, between a person and the tea, and between a person and themselves. You cannot force a dialogue to conclude in 30 minutes. But Father, they don't have the time," Anne quickly explained. "This is a way for us to introduce our culture effectively." "Effective is not always synonymous with meaningful," I replied. "We can invite them to sit for an hour, brew them a fine pot of tea, and let them feel it for themselves. Those who truly want to understand will stay. Those who just want to check in, whether for 30 minutes or 3, will take nothing away but a photograph." A flicker of disappointment crossed Anne's face. The first crack had appeared. She still saw the Hall of Serene Hearts through the lens of numbers. Her change was only on the surface. It had not yet seeped into the roots. Meanwhile, Song Qi faced a different challenge. He worked quietly, diligently. He swept the courtyard, wiped the tables, washed the cups, never shirking any task. He avoided me, as if ashamed of his own shadow. One day, a man in a sharp suit, a director of a large event management company, came to the tea house. He was an old partner of Song Qi's. "Song Qi," he clapped him on the shoulder familiarly. "I heard you've gone into seclusion here. Are you kidding? I have a big project. A 5-star hotel in Shanghai wants a calligraphy master to perform at their grand opening. The pay is very high. I immediately thought of you." Song Qi froze, the wet cleaning cloth still in his hand. I could see the struggle in his eyes. The glamour of the stage, the attractive numbers, the adulation of the crowd, all those things had once been his reason for living. He looked at the man, then glanced quickly at me, sitting in a far corner, pretending not to notice. "Thank you, but I can't go," Song Qi said, his voice soft but firm. I still have to finish washing this tea set." The man was surprised, then burst out laughing. "Washing a tea set? Are you crazy? You're trading a fortune for a few broken cups?" "Some things are more precious than a fortune," Song Qi replied, then turned his back and continued his work. The director shrugged and left with a contemptuous look. That evening, when the tea house was empty, I saw Song Qi sitting alone in the courtyard under the ginkgo tree. He wasn't crying, just silently looking up at the sky. I knew he had just fought an internal battle and he had won. He had chosen to stay with the broken cups instead of chasing an empty fortune. The new foundation might have cracks, but it was also growing stronger through trials like these. I knew the road ahead was still long, but at least we had started laying the first bricks together. Song Chi's path of repentance was not paved with roses, but with the shattered pieces of his pride. He worked hard, but his silence was a heavy burden. He was like a zither with broken strings. The form was still there, but it could not voice its heart. I knew that manual labor alone would never bring him peace. He needed to confront the very thing that had brought him to the pinnacle and also cast him into the abyss, the brush. One afternoon I called him into the study, the room he had once entered as a traitor. He came in, head bowed, not daring to look at me directly. "Are you afraid of this place?" I asked. I dare not," he mumbled. "Fear doesn't make the ink clearer," I said. "I want you to organize the old book collection. Many books are damp and need to be aired out." It was an excuse. I wanted him to touch the calligraphy books again, the rubbings of the great masters, the things that were once his passion. Song Chi complied in silence. He carefully carried out stacks of books, dusted them, and turned the pages. At first his movements were mechanical, but gradually I saw him pause longer on certain pages. His fingers gently traced a character by Zhao Mengfu. His eyes lit up when he saw a poem by Su Dongpo. The fire I thought had died within him was beginning to rekindle. And then, he found what I had deliberately left there. It was an old, unbound manuscript. On the cover were a few words in Qing Mei's handwriting, "Unfinished calligraphy." Inside were her calligraphy exercises. She was not a great master, but her brushwork had a gentle, humble quality and a unique sentiment. And on the last page was an unfinished poem she was copying. Thoughts on a Journey to Suzhou by Zhang Ji. She had only copied the first 2 lines. "I see the prefecture of Suzhou, all is like a camphor tree" poem. The strokes of the second line were slightly shaky, and then they stopped abruptly. These were the last characters she ever wrote before her illness took over. Song Chi stood frozen, holding the page, motionless. I knew, with his expertise, he immediately understood the significance of those unfinished strokes. "Master," he turned to look at me, his voice choked. "This island." "What my wife left behind," I said. She always regretted not finishing her favorite poem. I said no more. I left him with the space and the silence. For the next week, Song Chi was like a lost soul. He still did his chores, but in his spare moments he would go to the study, lay out Qing Mei's unfinished page, and just sit and stare. He didn't dare to put brush to paper. He was afraid of ruining it, of desecrating the work of the deceased. One night, I entered the study and found him still sitting there, under the late-night lamp. The ink was ground, the brush was soaked, but he still hadn't written. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I can't write," he said, his voice full of despair. "I can't find the feeling. I try to imitate the madam's handwriting, but it's just an empty shell. It doesn't have the serenity, the sentiment." "Because you are trying to imitate," I said. "Calligraphy is not about copying, it is a dialogue. You don't need to write exactly like her. Try to continue the poem with your own brushwork, with your own feelings. Have a dialogue with those 2 unfinished lines. Tell her what you have seen, what you have been through." I placed my hand on the old inkstone that Qing Mei had used. "This inkstone has hurt her heart. Now, it will listen to you too." My words seemed to touch something deep within him. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the torment was gone, replaced by a quiet acceptance. He picked up the brush. This time his hand did not tremble. He didn't try to write soft strokes like Qing Mei. He wrote with his own brushwork, a style that had been through storms, with strength, with brokenness, but also with a sincere repentance. He didn't continue with the next 2 lines of the poem. He wrote a small line of text beside it. The brush stops, the sentiment remains. This humble student begs to spend the rest of his life listening to the echo of the inkstone. He put down the brush, and then he wept. Not tears of despair, but tears of release. He hadn't finished the poem, but he had completed an important step on his journey to find himself again. He had learned that true art is not about showing off technique, but about daring to face the truth in one's soul. The echo from Qing Mei's old inkstone had finally been heard. The peace at the Hall of Serene Hearts was like the surface of an autumn lake, tranquil but capable of being rippled by a falling leaf or a strange wind. That strange wind arrived on a Tuesday morning, in the form of a young woman named Lin Wei. Lin Wei was a blogger, a famous tea and travel influencer on social media. She had millions of followers, and a single post from her could determine the success or failure of a restaurant or a tea house. She arrived unannounced, carrying a large camera and a professional smile. Xiao Mei, as the manager, went to greet her. The girl was a little flustered by Lin Wei's confidence and rapid-fire questions. "Hi, I'm Lin Wei, she said, extending a hand. I heard this place is very authentic. I'd like to write a review. She walked around, her camera clicking away. Nice space, very traditional, but a bit too quiet, don't you think? No music. Is the Wi-Fi strong? Xiaomei patiently explained the philosophy of the Hall of Serene Hearts, the silence for tea appreciation, the focus on the moment. But Lin Wei didn't seem to be listening. She was more interested in which corner is the most photogenic, which dish looks best on camera. She ordered a pot of Dahong Pao, one of our most precious teas. Song Chi, who was on tea duty that day, carefully performed each step, from warming the pot and cups to rinsing the leaves. But Lin Wei just filmed a short video with her phone, and then barely touched her cup. Good tea, she said dismissively, but the waiting time is a bit long. Do you have any faster options? Like tea bags, for busy people? Xiaomei and Song Chi just looked at each other, not knowing how to respond. I sat in my usual corner, observing it all. This was a different kind of storm. Not a storm of greed, but a storm of superficiality, of the instant noodle culture that was invading the world. This was a test not for me, but for the next generation of the Hall of Serene Hearts. Just then, An arrived. She saw Lin Wei and recognized her immediately. Oh, you're Lin Wei, right? I'm a fan of your work, she said cheerfully. Lin Wei looked at Anan, sizing up her outfit and handbag, then smiled more warmly. Hello, are you a customer here too? I'm the daughter of the owner, An said, hesitating slightly before adding, and I'm in charge of business development. The two modern women quickly found common ground. And Anne, with her sharp instincts, understood immediately what Lin Wei wanted. She didn't argue about tea bags. Instead, she said, I understand what you mean. We're trying to balance tradition and modernity. Perhaps we haven't done a good job of telling our story. Let me tell you about this pot of tea. And Anne didn't talk about the altitude of the tea plants or the complex processing methods. She told a story. She told how my grandfather had to travel all the way to the Wuyi Mountains to find these ancient tea trees. She told how my mother had once served this very tea to a famous poet. She explained the meaning of each tea utensil, not with technical terms but with simple analogies. This Zisha teapot, she said, pointing to the pot on the table, is like an old friend. The longer you use it, the more it remembers the flavor of the tea, making future brews even better. It needs time to get acquainted, to bond. Lin Wei, for the first time, put down her phone. She listened, her eyes filled with curiosity. And the silence, An continued, is not because we can't afford a sound system. It's because we want you to be able to hear your own sounds. The sound of boiling water, the sound of tea leaves unfurling, and the sound of your own heart. That is the most precious music of all. When An finished, Lin Wei was silent for a long time. Then she picked up her teacup, a cup of tea that was now almost cold, and took a sip. This time, she drank very slowly. I understand now, she said. Thank you. Thank you for the story. She didn't take any more pictures. She stayed, finished the pot of tea, and then left quietly, leaving only a sincere thank you. That evening, Lin Wei's review was posted. It didn't have any glamorous photos. It had only a single picture of the teacup on the old wooden table, with a ray of sunlight shining on it. The title of the article was, The Hall of Serene Hearts, a place where time stops to listen. The article recounted the story An had told. It didn't talk about prices or Wi-Fi. It talked about patience, about old friends, and about finding inner peace. The article went viral. Many people commented that they were tired of the hustle and bustle of life and wanted to find a place like that. That night, when it was just the two of us, An came to me. Father, did I do the right thing? I nodded. You didn't sell her a product. You shared a value with her. You're beginning to understand. An. She smiled. A truly serene smile. The storm of superficiality had passed, and the Hall of Serene Hearts not only stood firm, but also found a way to communicate with the modern world, not by changing its essence, but by telling its story in the most sincere way. My daughter had finally found her voice, a voice that blended the old and the new. And Anne's growth was like the brewing of a fine tea, requiring time for the initial bitterness to transform into a sweet aftertaste that lingers at the back of the throat. She no longer proposed bold business plans. Instead, she spent her time learning about the family history, about the stories behind each antique in the tea house. It seemed that only after nearly destroying everything did she realize the value of what she had. Part of her process of rediscovering her roots was to sort through the belongings of her mother, Qing Mei. I had saved that task, because I knew that only Annan had the right and the courage to face her own past. I gave her the key to Qingmei's old camphor wood chest, where she kept her most precious mementos. "Go on, my child," I said. "Perhaps you will find the answers you are looking for in there." And Anne spent the entire afternoon in the study, alone with the chest. I did not disturb her. I knew it was her private space, a silent dialogue between mother and daughter. Occasionally, I heard the faint sound of sniffling. In the evening, when I thought she had gone home, she emerged from the study, her eyes red but her expression strangely calm. She was holding a yellowed envelope. "Father," she said, her voice hoarse, "I found this." She handed me the envelope. On the front was Qingmei's familiar handwriting, addressed to my daughter, Annan. My heart twinged. I had never seen this letter. Perhaps these were the words she had wanted to say but never had the chance. "You read it," I said. "It's for you." Annan took a deep breath, and then slowly opened the letter. She read aloud, her voice trembling, as if each character was a crystallized tear. An, my dearest daughter. When you read these words, I will probably be in a very distant place. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you longer, to watch you grow, succeed, and find your own happiness. I know you are a strong, intelligent, and ambitious young woman. I have always been proud of that, but I am also afraid. I'm afraid that on your path, chasing the glittering stars out there, you will forget the gentle moon that always lights your way home. You always said that the Hall of Serene Hearts is a burden, that it's outdated. You don't like the smell of old tea. You don't like the silence. I understand. You belong to the world of skyscrapers, of ever-dancing numbers. But Annan, no matter how high one flies, one needs a place to land, a root to hold on to. Your father, he is a quiet man. His love is not in his words, but in the inkstone he grinds every morning, in the pot of tea he brews for me every evening. He has spent his whole life preserving the soul of this place, which is also to preserve a home for you. Don't blame him if he seems rigid. Try to understand his silence. I am not asking you to give up your dreams. I only hope that wherever you go, whatever you do not forget your heart. One day, when you are tired of the race, try to sit down and brew a pot of tea. You will find in its fragrance the love of your father and me, your childhood, and the answers to what you are searching for. I am not leaving you much in terms of material wealth. The greatest gift I can give you is the Hall of Serene Hearts, not to own, but to lean on. Please love your father for my part as well. I love you very much. Your mother, Qingmei. When Annan finished reading, she could no longer cry. She just sat there, clutching the letter to her chest. The letter held no blame, only love and understanding. It was like a mirror, reflecting all her actions and showing her how wrong she had been. She looked up at me. Mother. She knew everything. Your mother always understood you best, I said. I disappointed her. I hurt you, father, she said, her voice filled with remorse. I walked over, and for the first time in many years, I placed my hand on her head, gently stroking her hair. You did not disappoint your mother, Annan. You just took a slightly longer winding path to find your way home. Your mother and I have always been here, waiting for you. She broke down in my arms, the cry of a daughter who had found the love she thought she had lost. The unsent letter had finally reached its recipient. It not only resolved misunderstandings, but also mended a family bond that had almost been severed. That night, the Hall of Serene Hearts was filled not just with the fragrance of tea, but also with the aroma of forgiveness and reunion. Time in the Hall of Serene Hearts flowed like water in a teapot, slow, warm, and steeped in meaning. Autumn passed, giving way to the chilly winter of Suzhou, but the atmosphere inside the tea house was warmer than ever. The harmony between the four of us, an old man, a daughter learning to love again, a student rediscovering himself, and a passionate young woman, created a new energy for this place. I knew it was time for an important transition. Not a transfer of assets, but a transfer of legacy. I chose the day of the winter solstice, the day with the longest night, and also the day when people most anticipate the return of the light. I called Xiaomei, Songqi, and An into the study. Today, I said, I will teach you how to brew the Moonlight Serenity tea. All three were surprised. This secret tea recipe was a legend even within my own family. I took out the old rice paper scroll that I had found at the bottom of the koi pond. I carefully unrolled it. The handwritten characters of my grandfather appeared, rustic yet containing a whole secret. To brew this tea, I explained, one needs not only the right tea leaves and the right osmanthus flowers, but also three other most important things: dew water, moonlight, and the heart of the brewer. I had already prepared an earthenware jar of dew water that I had collected on the clearest autumn nights. Dew water carries the essence of heaven and earth. It is pure, but also very fragile. One must know how to preserve it. I pointed to the dried osmanthus flowers. The osmanthus must be picked on the night of the full moon in the 8th lunar month, when the fragrance is at its peak. It represents fulfillment, the most beautiful moment. And finally, I looked at all three of them, is the heart. The brewer must have a tranquil heart, free from distractions, free from calculations. Only then can the fragrance of the tea, the fragrance of the flowers, and the essence of heaven and earth truly blend together. I didn't brew it myself. I had Song Chi take charge of roasting the tea leaves, a task that required patience and perfect temperature control. I had Xiao Mei take charge of scenting the flowers, a task that required delicacy and gentleness. To an An, I entrusted the task of boiling the dew water. The water must boil to the exact fish-eye stage, no less, no more. It requires intense observation and concentration, I told her. The three of them, each with their own task, worked together in perfect harmony. There was no commander, only a tacit understanding. Song Chi was no longer an arrogant man. He worked with the humility of one who knows he still has much to learn. Xiao Mei still retained her purity, but had gained the confidence of a manager. An no longer had her hasty demeanor. She patiently watched each bubble, her face filled with a seriousness I had never seen before. When everything was ready, I had all three of them perform the final step together, pouring the water into the pot. The fragrance of the tea filled the study, an indescribable scent. It had the sweetness of flowers, the clarity of tea, the coolness of dew, and something deep, serene like the moonlight. We sat down together to enjoy the tea. It was the best pot of tea I had ever had in my life. Not because it was brewed according to the recipe, but because it was brewed with harmony, with repentance, and with love. After the tea, I took out the Duangshi stone that Mr. Li had gifted me. I placed it on the table. This stone, I said, is to make a new ink stone for the Hall of Serene Hearts. I will not be the one to make it. I looked at Song Chi. I entrust this to you. Use your time and your talent to create an inkstone worthy of this place. Then I looked at Xiao Mei and an An, and I have also carved a new seal. I took out a seal I had secretly carved over the past few days. It was not made of precious stone, just boxwood. The seal face was not my name, nor a complex design. It had only 3 characters, carved in an ancient seal script style, but with a modern, innovative touch. Ding Tam Duong, Hall of Serene Hearts. This is the seal of succession, I said. It does not belong to any individual. It belongs to this place, to this spirit. I entrust it to Xiao Mei, as the manager, and I entrust it to Anan, as the guardian of the family. Use it together, worthily. Xiao Mei and Anan reached out with both hands to receive the seal. In that moment, I knew that the legacy of the Liang family, the soul of the Hall of Serene Hearts, had been passed on completely. I stood up and went out to the back porch. The winter wind blew gently, carrying a chill, but my heart was warm. I saw the image of Qing Mei smiling at me from the end of the garden. The Go game of my life had finally reached a fulfilling conclusion. I had not lost anything. I had only given away to receive so much more in return.